This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Habayim. Welcome, everyone. We have an amazing topic tonight. We're continuing the Shiurim of the series. The Shiurim of Sefer Shmais are dedicated by Dr. Zakheim and Mishpachta, Lila Nishmas, Hashem Le'ez ben Rabbi Zakheim, Lila Nishmas, Dr. Zakheim's father and mother, David ben Rabbi Yaakov Tzvi HaKohen, Rivka Bas Tzvi HaLevi, Began Eden, Temnu Chassan, the Shiurim Mitzvah Shalom for the whole family, Abiyas Bel Tzedek, Shiurim of Chedesh Shvat, are dedicated by the Israeli family, Lila Nishmas Meir ben David, and Yeshua ben Yecheskel, whose yard sites are Ches Shvat, Chav Tes Shvat, respectively. And tonight is a very special evening. Tonight is the Bar Mitzvah Boy V'Yom of Eliyahu Israeli, who's making a siyam on Shas, Mishnayos. They should be Zeicha, Tzizka Legadloi, L'tar L'chupa L'masim Tov. Tonight's Shiur is sponsored by Avram and Raquel Ben Hayun for a Refuah Shlema of Daniel Ben Flora, Refuah Shlema of B'Karev Mamish, the Sof Shachal Yisrael. Okay, we have a lot of important announcements tonight. First of all, you know what the Shabbos is? You heard about the Shabbos? The Shabbos is Chod Shabbos Mavachim Adar Aleph, which means there are two Adars. So let's say if it would be a regular year, then you could say either I'm going to get the concealed or the revealed in English, or I'm going to get the Lashon Kodesh. But this year there are two Adars, which means you got to get both. So you say, why do I need both? I told you already many times that there is material in one that's not in the other. So both are necessary. Now, little secret is we're working out possibly putting this out in small pocket sizes. So we said, what are you going to do with that? It will fit right in your Shalach Manas, okay? So we're working on that. And but so you say, well, which side should I get? Of course, this was good for reading, and the other one is good for the Shalach Manas. Okay, if anybody wants to mishtatif in upcoming projects, they're coming Bezos Hashem in quick succession. So anybody wants to mishtatif, the next one in the queue is the Sefer Lashon Kodesh on Chinuch Habanim, which is basically we're completing imminently. After that, The Fire and the Soul in English on Lag BaOmer, published by Artful. If anybody wants to be mishtativ, let's say you say, I like to mishtativ in French or Spanish form, we got that for you too. Upcoming in Elul, The Mystery and the Majesty, in French and in Spanish. What else? Oh, now tonight's Shiur is about the Chida. So I know people are thinking, oh, you're speaking about the Chida because of the upcoming trip to Italy on February 17th, which there are a few spots left. Reb Doib almost took the last spot. Well, we still have more spots left. Please join us. Saying, oh, because you're going to Italy, you're speaking about the Chida. No, just the opposite. Because we're giving Shiur on the Chida, so we're good. Then after that, we're going. Okay? That's how it works. If you want to join us, that's March 3rd to March 5th. First ever Yache Kala in Miami. We have amazing topics about morality and ethics in warfare. Very interesting subject. Okay, here we go. The Chida, Rabbi Azulai lived an amazing life, a remarkable life. He lived from 1724 to 1806. He was one of the most prolific writers, great travelers, and poskim, and his farm ranged the full gamut of possible subjects, from drush to halacha. He wrote Pirkei Yosef. He wrote Machzik Bracha, Chaim Sha'al. He wrote Sfarim on travel, Magal. He wrote Sfarim on bibliography, Shem Hagdolim. He wrote Sfarim al HaTorah, Chaim Masanach, Nei David, Nachal Kidumit. He wrote encyclopedias, Midbar Kedemis, Vash Tafi. How did he do so much? How is it possible? There's an account of something like 71 Sfarim, and some have even more than that. So there's one line in the Chida, actually there's a biography on the Chida that Rabbi Zev Peretsky wrote, and he opens with this line, and I always think about this line when I think about the Chida. In Moyer Be'etzba, which is also an amazing little sefer. I started learning Moyer Be'etzba this year. It had a very big hashpah on me. Moyer Be'etzba tells you the right kavanah to have at every part of the day. So for instance, what to think about when you're walking to Shachris? Literally, maybe 24 different things. What to think about when you walk into a shul. Every time you walk into a shul, you think the following 3 things. I'm being Mekayim the mitzvah of Moira Mikdash. I'm being Mekayim the mitzvah of Moira Misha Shoichem Sham. 2 different things. To have awe of the place and awe of the one who resides there. And you ask Hashem for permission to come in. So right then and there, it's 3 things. Like you walk into a shul, you're Mekayim 3 mitzvahs. Every time you walk into a shul. How to say Amen Yehishmei Rabbah? There's a whole shaila. Are you supposed to say it with all of your kavana or all of your strength? So I like to say, if you actually said Amen Yehishmei Rabbah with all your kayach, they would carry you out. They would institutionalize you. I mean, do people actually say Amen Yehishmei Rabbah? Because people make believe, Amen Yehi. How you could scream much louder than that. We know that. We have it on video. You could scream louder than that. So why? So the Chida says, what does it mean? It means you rev yourself up as if you're going to say it b'chol kaichai, but when you say it to be kiragel. So in his Sefer Moira Be'etzba, the Chida talks about what to do on Shabbos. Shabbos is a very busy day. Between the Sudais and the Tefillahs and being Maver Sedra and all the Limudim, and you also want to rest. How do you fit everything in? So the Chida has a line. This is my favorite. Chida says, "Mi she'enai ma'aved hazman yesh eis lakol." Someone who doesn't waste his time, there's time for everything. That's like, to me, encapsulates maybe in a way the life of the Chida. Now the Chida wrote maybe one of my favorite svarim, Shem Hagdolim. Shem Hagdolim, the Chida wrote in Lazaretto. Lazaretto, he's in quarantine. When he came to Italy, when you come to a new country, they lock you up for 40 days. So he was on a boat for 40 days. No svarim, no computer. From memory, he listed in alphabetical order the names of all the Gedolim who ever lived before him, and the names of all the svarim that were ever written before his time in alphabetical order. So we're talking about, right now, 50 Yitzchaks, 50 Rabbeinu Yitzchak Bar Shesher, Rabbeinu Yitzchak Bar, And what does it talk about them? It lists the farm they wrote, the times they lived in, the years they lived, what their life was like, in very brief comments. And one may ask, what's the tachlis of the sefer? It's basically an encyclopedia. It's a telephone book. Like, what's the purpose of such a sefer? So in one of the earliest editions of the Shem HaGdolim, it came with a haskama of the Malbim. And the Malbim gives a mashal. Imagine you're famished, you're tired, you're walking through a country without any provisions, without any mode of travel, and you're hungry, you're thirsty, you're tired, and you encounter an orchard. And you come into the orchard, and there are lush grapes. You bite into them, they're juicy, they're delicious, they energize you. And then there's wine sitting around, and there's sandwiches. I'm adding to the mashal. The sandwiches is not a mashal, that's my addition. So in case you look it up and it says the Malbim didn't say sandwiches, I'm letting you know now. And it's comfortable, and there's food, and there's drink, and it's set up for your enjoyment and rest and delight. And then naturally, you're sort of wondering, hey, who did this for me? Who planted this orchard? Who set up the grapes? Who set up the wine? Who set up the hammock for me to rest? So you ask someone, and who made this orchard? Who set it up? You answer, huh? What kind of question is that? We don't ask that question. Say, does anybody know? No, nobody knows. Did anybody ask? No, nobody's interested. It would be an embarrassment. How isn't it instinctive that if somebody does you such a big favor and someone gives you such a great gift, you want to know who's my benefactor? So says the Malbim, we sit down in front of a Gemara. So we know there's somebody Rashi and there's somebody Tyson. But who's the Ein Yaakov? Who's the Ein Mishpat? Who's the Masaras Hashas? Who's Rabbeinu Chanana? Who's the Maram Shif? Who's the Biur on the Maram Shif? Who's the Mitzvah Isan? Who are all these Mefarshim that set everything up for us? Well, I don't know. What's the difference? I'll just learn what it says. You don't want to know who they are? You don't even, their names are not even known. If I would say their name right now, nobody would know who they are. How could you allow these names to fall into disuse? Says the Malbim, the most basic obligation of someone who receives a benefit is at least you want to know who is my benefactor. So the basic obligation of a Jew is you need to know the elementary information about the Gdolei Yisrael who lived before us, who gave us the Svarim that we learn, the Divrei Torah that we say, and this is what the Malbim writes in his Haskama to the Shem HaGedolim. And this idea of the Malbim, this philosophy of the Malbim, we want to apply to the Chida himself, because the Chida basically took hundreds of names of Gdolei Yisrael that nobody ever heard of, and he took them out of the ash heap and he brought them to life. So I would like to try tonight to give ourselves a familiarity with the Chida and his family background and the Gdolim that lived before him and were associated with him. And maybe we're going to speak about the Chida possibly a few weeks. And let us begin with Rabbi Avram Azulai. Most people, when they hear Avram Azulai, everybody knows the Chida was Reb Chaim, Yosef, David, Azulai. We're going to talk about where that name comes from and where that name does not come from. Perhaps you've heard the name Avraham Azulai. You ever hear of Avraham Azulai? You go to Hebron today, and in the ancient cemetery in Hebron, buried where you have the Rishis Chachma and the Melech Shloimeh and the Stei Chemed, and you have the Chesed Avram, Rabbi Avram Azulai. Rabbi Avram Azulai, the Chida always refers to as my grandfather, and we're going to see, was he his grandfather? But we're going to start with the very first Avram Azulai. Tonight we're going to learn, I'm going to try to keep it somewhat simple. There were really 3 Avraham Azulais, maybe 4, and maybe even more, okay? And you should at least be familiar with some of them. So let's start with the very first Avraham Azulai. We don't know too much about him. This comes from the Sefer Malki Rabbana. Now, remember I mentioned the name of the Sefer Shem HaGedolim. Shem HaGedolim is a encyclopedic listing of all the Gedolim who ever lived before the Chida. There's a similar Sefer written called Malki Rabbanan on the Chachamim of Morocco, which does with the Chachamim of Morocco what the Chida did with all the Gedolim before him. The first Avram Azulai was Migolei Sfarad. Migolei Sfarad means he was exiled from Spain in 1492. From Castile. Where does he come? He comes to Fez. He goes to Fez. This is in the times of Rabbi Shlomo ben Melech, Rabbi Shimon Lavi, and he is the grandfather of the Chesed Avram. So we have the first Avraham Azulai. He's around the year 1492. He leaves Spain in 1492. He leaves Spain. Where does he go? He goes to Fez. Okay, fine. His grandson is the Chesed Avram, Rabbi Avram Azulai. The well-known, the most famous Avram Azulai is the Chesed Avram. He's buried in Hebron. He was a Rav in Hebron. He was also a Rav where? I'll give you a little hint. There are hundreds of miles of tunnels under this area. Okay?
Chumash.
Okay, yeah, they live in those tunnels, but it's called Gaza. He was the rabbi in Gaza, and he was the rabbi in Hebron. He was a great makubal. His most well-known sefer is the Chesed Avram. You know, there's a shaila on Hanukkah. You ever hear of Hanukkah? Okay, I'm glad you're laughing. Okay, Hanukkah, you like the what's the menorah? What's the what? What's that? You like candles? You like neiros? Do you need to have a menorah? Does it say in the Gemara you need to have? It says you need to light neiros. Neiros. You go. You're moist about neiros. let's say I take a nair and I stick it onto the table. Mishnah Berurah says, be careful, you stick it onto the table in my belt and burn down the table. What do you mean might burn down the table? What about the fact I didn't light a menorah? Doesn't say in halach you have to light the menorah. No, Davnei Nezer. Maybe in Siman Shin. Quote, the Chesed Avram, who says, Al Pi Kabbalah, you need a kli. The whole inyan of menorah comes from the Chesed Avram.
Mm-hmm.
Or another famous teaching of his that some server doesn't like. That Sfas is the most predisposed city to learn Kabbalah. Chesed Avram. There are a lot of ideas that we know about. They originate in the Sefer Chesed Avram. So the Chesed Avram is the grandson of the first Avram Azulai. He wrote Chesed Avram. He wrote Bale Bris Avram. He also wrote a parish on the Zayar. I think it's called Ar HaCham. We're going to come to that. He, in the Hakdama to the Chesed Avram, he talks about his grandfather, the first Avram Azulai. He calls him Anav Ne'im Zmirois Yisra. Okay. Now let's go to number 5 on the sheet. Number 5 is the Sefer Shem Hagdolah. This is the Chida's entry for his grandfather. Now I'm going to take you right away. Did you find the Chida on your family tree? People want to, why am I doing that family tree? Because last week was Tu B'Shvat, Rosh Hashanah, Ilanos. We have to talk about Ilanos. No, you didn't buy that. Okay. So, do you see the Chida on the family tree? Chaim Yosef David Azulai. He was nifter in Tav Kuf Samach Vav. You know what year that is? Okay, I'm going to give you a little hint, okay? 18 something. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to give you a formula. This is one of the most important things you ever learn. You take Hebrew days, and all you do is you add the year 1240. It's one of the best ideas you'll ever get. So Tav Kuf Samach Vav is 566. So add 1240. Now you have to know first grade math to be able to do that. But if you have 566, 1804. 1804. Some of you I'd like to hire as my accountant, right? But you take 566 and you add 1240, it's 1806. 1806. Okay? So Chida was nifter in 1806. And he's writing his family tree. Going back to Rabbi Avram Azulai, the Chesed Avram, who's like, he's the third one on your family tree. So he says that Avram Azulai he's the son of Mordechai. His family comes from Castile. They went to Fez from Castile. And then he tells a story. And this is one of my favorite stories because maybe at the end of this Chida series, he tells the following story. My Zayda, the Chesed Avram, was going to Kaputia. And for certain reasons, they had to get off the boat quick. Maybe it was Shabbos. And as soon as they got off the boat, there was a terrible storm, and the boat capsized, and everything was lost. Had he not gotten off the boat, he would have died. And as to remember this miracle, he signs his name in the shape of a boat. Now, Hashem sent me a matana. I recently got a hold of a sefer that the Chida signed his own signature. And the Chida himself signs in a boat. If you want, I'll show you a picture after the shiur. But in the series, maybe I'll even bring it in. We'll see. So that's an interesting story. So the Chesed Avram comes to Hebron, and he was a baki in many chachmos, and a soifer, and a makubal. Now I want you to look at your sheet. Says the Chida, who was the son of my grandfather, the Chesed Avram Azulai? His name was Yitzchak. Yitzchak, the son of Avram Azulai. He was a soifer. He was a speaker. He was a manhig. Who were the son-in-laws of Rabbi Avram Azulai? The son-in-laws were Rabbi Binyamin Ze'evi. See on the family tree? Rabbi Binyamin Ze'evi was a well-known guy. And who else? Rabbi David Yitzchaki. Rabbi Binyamin Ze'evi and Rabbi David Yitzchaki. Let me see. Okay. Then the Chida says, Rabbi Yom Zevin and Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi David Yitzchaki. Who were their children, says the Chida. Their children were Avraham Yisraeli. Avraham Yisraeli was the son of David. Abraham, their children were Avraham Yisrael Ze'evi, was the son of Rabbi Yamin Ze'evi, and the son of Rabbi David Yitzchaki was Avraham Yitzchaki. Okay? Now, let me ask you a question. What was Rabbi Yamin Ze'evi and Rabbi David Yitzchaki to the Chida? Well, what was Rabbi Yitzchak to the Chida? Rabbi Yitzchak was the Chida's great-grandfather. Yeah? So Binyamin Ze'evi and Rabbi David Yitzchaki were the Chida's great-great-uncles. Okay? Rabbi Binyamin Ze'evi had a son, we just mentioned, Rav Avram Yisrael. Rav David Yitzchaki had a son, Avram Yitzchaki. Now, why were both of their sons named Avram? Very simple. After the grandfather, Chesed Avram. Now, I want to show you how all of these people are listed as Gedolei Yisrael in the Shem Hagdem. So if you look at number 6, Rabbi Yitzchak Azulai was the Chida's great-grandfather. Rabbi Binyamin Ze'evi was the Chida's great-great-uncle. Rabbi David Yitzchaki was his great-great-uncle. Rabbi Avram Yisrael Ze'evi was like the Chida's first cousin 3 times removed, and Avram Yitzchaki was his first cousin 3 times removed. Now the Chida has quite an entry for Rabbi Avram Yitzchaki. He says Rabbi Avram Yitzchaki was the son of Rabbi David Yitzchaki, the son of the daughter of the Chesed Avram. And the Talmidim of Rabbi Avram Yitzchaki were the Gedolei Hadar. Maram Chagiz, Mari HaKoyen. And he said, the Chida says, my cousin learned Kabbalah from my mother's father. And my own father, says the Chida, learned by Rabbi Avram Yitzchaki. And he was the Rosh at the time of all these Gedolim. Now, very interesting. Says the Chida, and I mamish had shtickle Chalisha Sadas when I saw this. Actually, I had actual Chalisha Sadas. Says the Chida, I saw a lot of the writing of Rabbi Avram Yitzchaki and his power and his wonders. He went up to Shamayim on Friday, Yud Gimel Sivan, 1729, and he was the first one in our era that they allowed to be buried within the 4 Amos of Zechariah. Why do I have Chalisha Sadas? Because I was there, and I even had a map, and on the map it said Avram Yitzchaki, and I had no idea who it was. I have a map of all the Kram on Har Zaytim. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds, if not more, of Gedolim. And I dafka went to the foot of Zechariah Hanavi. First of all, to go to Zechariah Hanavi. But one of the main reasons I wanted to go there is because you know who's buried at the foot of Zechariah Hanavi? Someone who gave a shiur about a few years ago. The wife of the Sma. Now, 3 years ago, me and Reb Doiv, we were in the city of Lemberg. And in the last few minutes of our trip, we made sure, because everybody really wanted, to go to a kever in Lemberg. And at this kever was the Taz, the Sma, the Chacham Tzvi, the Shoylam Yeshiv, the Yeshuas Yaakov, and the Magen Gibai. And where is the wife of the Sma? The wife of the Sma, after he died, went to Yerushalayim by herself. She was a very big tzaddikas. Her piskei halacha are brought in the hakdama of the Prisha and the Drisha. She set up a gemach in Yerushalayim, and she was so righteous, they buried her by the feet of Zechariah Navi. And I knew there were a few other people buried there. And I saw the map of Avram Yitzchaki. I didn't know it was the Chida's first cousin 3 times removed. But the Chida says that he was a very eminent sage, and he was the Rebbe of the Gedolei Hador in his generation, and that would be a reason for me to go back there. So Bez Hashem, hope to go back there. And once we're talking about him, I mean, did you ever hear of Avram Yitzchaki? Probably the Chida would be very happy that we brought out this name, and we brought it to life. I'm going to tell you two divrei Torah from Rabbi Yitzchaki. You ready for this? I mean, you don't hear every day divrei Torah from Rabbi Yitzchaki. Can I get like a tehillim, a siddur that has a tehillim in it? The pasuk says like this: "Tam libi b'kirbi, v'hagigi." Okay, Parak Lamed Tes. Ready for this? Okay, let's see if we could. You ready? Tam libi b'kirbi, v'hagigi, stivareish, dibarti b'lshayin. You ever hear that pasuk? It sounds like vaguely familiar. Sounds like it has something to do with tehillim, right? Are you allowed to say, what do you call somebody who says, "Oh, Nura Beit Planya, there's always fire burning in Plany's house"? What is that called? Remember? Very good. Avak Lashon Hara. If you say fire is always burning, it could mean he's very hospitable, or it could mean he's a glutton. He's always barbecuing. It's Avak Lashon Hara. Says Rabbi Avram Yitzchaki. Now, not just Sam Avram Yitzchaki. Yeah. So this is from Rabbi Avram Yitzchaki, and the Chida quotes in his Parish on Tehillim. Tam libi b'kirbi. I get all warmed up, and I get Yira Shamayim. Bahagigi. If I would say Sivaresh, there's fire in someone's house. Dibarti Bolshoini. It could be Lashon Hara. Okay, that's the remez of Rabbi Avram Yitzchaki, cousin of the Chida. Next Varta. Say about Yemei Purim, because it's the Shabbos. I said it's Shabbos Mevarchim Chodesh Adar. Mishenichnas Adar Marim B'Simcha. I know you prefer to be a grouch. You would rather move and frown and walk around. Sorry, it's all over. You still have that another week to do that. Try to chaperine as much grouchiness as you can. But we know. Now says the Chida, my father told me, in the name of our cousin, Rabbi Avram Yitzchaki, that on the day of a person's birthday, a person's mazel is strong. So why is it that tzaddikim die on the day they were born? If your mazel is strong, you should die dafka not on your birthday. I mean, what kind of birthday present is? Oh, the birthday present. You're dead. Wow, that's really nice. Could you wrap it in a bow? What's the birthday present? We take away the tzaddik on the day that he's born. The answer is, my father said in the name of Rabbi Yitzchaki, because for tzaddikim, the day that they're mistalek, it brings great elevation to their neshama. Because their mazel is strong on their birthday, that's why they're nifter on the day of their birthday, because their neshama has a great aliyah on that day. Haman was happy that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away on Zayin Adar. But just the opposite. The fact that he passed away on the day that he was born, that shows that our mazel is strong on that day, not weak. That's what Rabbi Yitzchaki said. Fine. Let's move along. Now that we brought Rabbi Yitzchaki, and so next time you go to Har HaZeitim, call up Josh Wander, say you want to go. I know everyone goes to the regular spots on the top where they think it's safe. Now you go all the way to the bottom. That's where the Bartanura is on the bottom. Zechariah Hanavi, the Rabbeinu Kleinimus Balnanes is on the bottom. There's no one else on the bottom. Me personally, David Amelas. So they asked, why didn't Reb Chaim Volozhiner? So they say Reb Chaim Volozhiner passed away 7 days after he was born. Why? Because when you have a bris milah, that's really when you're born. So he really passed away when he was born. So Moshe Rabbeinu, why did he pass away 7 days later? Oh, he was born. He was Noilan Mo, and David, he was also Noilan Mo. Okay, now we go to the Chida's grandfather, Marenu Rab Yeshaya Azulai. And lo and behold, next to Bela Katz, the Eishes Hasma and Avram Yitzchaki at the foot of Zechariah Navi, Rabbi Shaya Azulai. I saw the name when I was looking at the map. I don't know why I didn't. It's very hard to know. The graves are rubbed out of it. But now that we're mentioning the name of the Chida's grandfather, I'm going to tell you about Torah from the Chida's grandfather. There's another pasuk in Tehillim. The pasuk says, tell me if this sounds familiar. Beloikim ahalel davar, Bashem ahalel davar. So says Rabbi Shaya Azulai. We know Chai Vadam levarich al harak shem tumvarch al Torah. So we say Beloikim, whether it's midas hadin ahalel davar al praise Hashem, Bashem, or whether it's midas harachamim ahalel davar, or another pshat. The pasuk says, the Gemara tells us in brachos, if one is mekabel yisurim ba'ahava, the reward is yira zera ya'ar. You'll live long. So this is the meaning that beloikim ahalel davar. If you praise Hashem when the midas hadin hits a person, and you're mekabel the simcha, and you're a halel davar, you'll be zoicha b'Hashem. You'll be zoicha to have midas hachesed. Next pshat of Rabbi Shai Azulai. No? You want to hear the Torah from the grandfather Chida? No? I thought so. Okay. What does Yaakov Avinu tell Yosef? Re'ei panecha loy filalti v'hinei hera oisi elokim. This is Oyon B'nayim. Yaakov says, Re'ei panecha loy filalti. I never thought I would see your face. What did he mean? Are you allowed to look at a Russia? You're not allowed to look at a Russia. Also, it's back in Russia. So Yaakov said, I thought I would never be able to look at your face because I thought maybe you went down to the side, you became a Rasha. But you know why I'm able to see your face? You ready for this? Hine hera oisi elokim. Because God showed me to you when you're about to sin with Eshet Potifera. God showed me to you. So you didn't sin. That's why I could look at your face. Simply, we translated, I never thought I would see you, and now I'm seeing you. No, I never thought I would see your face because you're Russia. But why are you not a Russia? Hine hera oisi elokim. God showed me to you. Grandfather of Chida. You say one more, I'll give you one more. What do you do if the Yetzer Hara strikes? You say Shema. What's the last resort? Very good, Rav Shmuel. Rav Shmuel had his Wheaties today. So simply means remember the day of your own death. No, Yetzer Hara, don't mess with me. One day we're going to shech you. The Gemara in Sukkah says, "Asid lishchayt malach hamaves." Yeah. So Yizkor loy, remind him of his day of demise. Grandfather of Chida. Where is he buried? Ezra. Tell them, even though you're a kohen. The foot of Zechariah Navi and Har Zayton. You need a map? I'm going to show you exactly where. Right now. Here's the map. This is the grave of Zechariah Navi. And number 7, right over here. The exact map, exact matan. Rabbi Shai Azulai. Who's his son? Rabbi Yitzchak Zerachia Azulai. Now you can't make this up. Wednesday morning, I give a shiur. It's a 3-minute shiur. A Dvar Torah at 10:45 a.m. I look at it like 10:30. I try to find something very quickly. That's when I prepare early. Seriously, okay. Today, I opened something up. Who? Dvar Torah from Rabbi Yitzchak Zerachia Azulai. I don't think the name never even registered. The Dvar Torah was on this week's Parsha. When Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai, what happened in Har Sinai? The Malachim tried to kill him. When he came down and he got an aliyah on that, Moshe Rabbeinu got an aliyah that Monday. Yeah, Moshe ben Amram Levi. Yeah, he was a Levi. Did he bench Goimah? That was the Shaila the Chida brings from his father, Rabbi Yitzchak Zerachia. his Rebbe, the Chazon Nachum, asked the Chida's father. Chazon Nachum says, in my dream, I asked Rabbi Yitzchak Zerachia, but he didn't answer me. I had to actually knock on his door. He didn't want to answer me. What? Why should we live in a plane? So Rabbi Yitzchak Zerachia says, no, he didn't bench Goimel. He said, did Avram bench Goimel when he came out of Or Kasdim? He said, no. He said, did Yitzchak bench Goimel after the Akedah? Anytime God commands you, you need to be Moiser Nefesh, you don't bench Goimel if you're sick. Okay, fine. So now the big question, okay? Now when everyone to take out their family trees, and I want you to tell me, how is Rabbi Avram Azulai related to the Chida? The Chesed Avram. I want to know the exact relation, the precise term. No, the Chesed Avram, which is the second Avram Azulai. Okay, Rabbi Yitzchak Zerachia is the father. Rabbi Shai is the grandfather. Rabbi Yitzchak is the great grandfather. And Avram is the great grandfather. Two greats. Is the Chesed Avram the Chida's grandfather? No. So a guy actually has the nerve to write a shaila to the Chida. That what right do you have to call the Chesed Avram your grandfather? I just read your Shema Doilim. He's your great grandfather. Just like a guy walking around saying, my grandfather Rashi, your grandfather Rashi, 50 generations, your grandfather. So in the Shal Teshuvas Chaim Sha'al, Masha Sha'alti Mimeni Yedid Nafshi, Eichani Koisev Al Arav Chesed Avram Mar Zakeni, or Masha Kasabti B'Shem Agdam Nikar Shuz Zakeni is my grandfather's grandfather. First, I want to tell you, Loi Mechachma Sha'al. That's the most ridiculous question I have. Don't you know that when the Marshal wrote to the Ramah, hey Ramah, you don't write with the proper Hebrew grammar. You're not medaktek beloshoin. So the Ramah said back, that's dikduke anios, meaning, come on, that's shvacha ma'isa. That's your question. The grammar is not good. So that's what you're asking. Says the Chida, klach itzel yafai. That's an expression of Latama. Meaning, like, get a life, That's what you were. I didn't speak with proper grammar. That's your kasha on me. Why did I call him grandfather? Why don't you ask like a real question on Gufe Halachas? But you want to know, I'm not going to get too involved, but I'll dismiss you quickly. Says the Chida, the Maharash writes, my grandfather is the Ramban, and he's 6th generation from the Ramban. And all those Ashkenazic rabbis, they always say, oh, my grandfather was the Bush, my grandfather the Bach, my grandfather Tosus Yomtiv. All the Ashkenazim always have a Chashav Zayda. It's a million generations up. Nobody ever challenges them. Doesn't the Gemara Nazir stand up? Gimel Rus Bas Benoy Shel Egloin. Tosfos says Lav Dafka Bas Benoy Harbe Doirois. Doesn't the Gemara Chagiga say, it says about Reb Lezer ben Arach, I think, that he's Ben Benoy Shel Avram Avinu, and Tosfos says not Ben Benoy Lav Dafka, means he has the same masim as Avram Avinu. Doesn't the Medrash in Vayishlach say that Rabbeinu HaKadosh wrote a letter to Rabbi Afas, I'm sending this letter from Yehuda, your servant, to Malka Antoninus. So Rabbi Afas says, why are you being mevazeh your kavod? So Rabbi said, I'm not any better than my grandfather Yaakov Avinu, who said Avdecha Yaakov. Rabbi said about Yaakov, my grandfather. So I could say about the Chesed Avram, my grandfather. But I thought, now you really appreciate the question. Now you see he's not a grandfather. He's his grandfather's grandfather. That's why you need a family tree to understand. Shas Teshuvas Chaim Sha'al Chelek Aleph Siman Samach. Okay. Now, anybody here in the Kameos business? How many Avram Azulai do we have so far? 2. Now we're doing a third one. If you go to Morocco, in Marrakesh, buried there is someone who has one of the longest titles in the whole Shem Hagdara. Harav HaChassid HaMefursam HaMekubal Halaki Rabbi Azulai from the city of Marrakesh, a student of Yitzchak Dilavia, a friend of Rabbi Shlomo Amar. Rabbi Shlomo Amar and Rabbi Azulai, the third, were associates, and they argued about the Zohar. Contemporaries. That's a good word. Thank you, Dave. Rav Shlomo Amar was nifter in the year Tav Sadi Ches. So that's 1738, earlier than Rav Azulai. And he comes to Rav Azulai in a dream. Chida brings out. And he says, "Look, I want to tell you something. The way I learned the Zohar in Shamayim is correct. The way I learned, not the way you. But the way you learned is what the Rashbi meant. So the way I learned is right, but you understood what Rav Shimon Bar Yochai actually meant." Okay, that's just an interesting story. Try to make heads or tails on that. I heard, says the Chida, that Rabbi Avram Zai III was related to my great-great-grandfather Chesed Avram, and he wrote a wondrous Parsha on the Zohar. And he was the Rebbe of Rabbi Yaakov Pinto and Rabbi Shaya HaKohen. And I heard from reliable sources that my cousin, the Rabbi Avram Zai III, would say that many people say that Azulai is a Rashi Tevos. Isha, Zaina, V'chalala, La Yikasa. And he would say, if anyone says that, I put them in Cherem. I put them in Cherem. Not only that, he put people in Cherem for saying that. The word Azulai stands for, in English, a harlot, or a defiled woman you should not take. We know a kohen cannot marry a Zaina or a Halal. So the word Azulai stands for Isha, Zaina, V'chalala, La Yikasa. So in a way, it's a little demeaning. You know, on the one hand, you can look at it, it's like prestige. I'm a kohen. What does kohen mean? He says, I'm a halal yikach. But on the other hand, it's like, I don't know if somebody's going to carry on the name. You know, don't take a legitimate, you know. Actually, in one of the official biographies of the Chida, from Rav Meir ben Ayahu, he brings that they found ancient documents in Corfu that, in fact, when a kohen would marry a halala, they would change their name to Azulai. And then other Rabbanim sort of wondered, why is it embarrassing that Azulai means that? First of all, that's only if you spell Azulai, Aleph, Zayin, Vav, Lamed, Yud. Isha, Zayin, Chalai, Yikach. But the Chida's family spelled it Aleph, Zayin, Vav, Lamed, Aleph, Yud. So it doesn't even work. But I want to tell you something about this Rabbi Azulai. Says the Chida, I heard from a holy man. His name was Reb Chaim ibn Atam. You know who that is? Ar Chaim HaKadosh. The Chida learned by the Ar Chaim HaKadosh. The Ar Chaim HaKadosh came to Yerushalayim for a year and change. And the Chida learned by him. And the Ar Chaim HaKadosh told me that he knew Rabbi Azulai the third. And if somebody was sick, Rabbi Azulai the third would write a kameya. You know what he write in the kameya? He would write very mysterious words. Yehi ratzon shetishlach refuah shalema leploini ben ploini mechoili ploini amen stella without any shemas. So if anybody out there needs to make extra cash and they want to go into the kameya business, you don't need to get fancy. Kameya is an amulet that they used to put. They would hang it around their neck or put it under their pillow. And traditionally, it has various shemas. Rav Azulai did no fancy stuff. Hashem should send Bible Ben Beryl or for Shalema for his ingrown toenail. And that's it. It said his name and it said his illness. And that's it. And one second. And the Chaim HaKadosh told me that he is in possession of kameyos from Avram Azulai. Fine. Now the Chida was born, we said, in 1724. How do we know that? Now here's another personality I want you to be familiar with. Back to the family tree. Okay, back to family tree. The Chida's father is who? No? Yitzchak Zerachia. Okay? The Chida's mother, Sarah, Bas Reb Yosef Beiler. Sounds Sephardi or Ashkenazi? Ashkenazi. Part of the godless of the Chida was he was able to combine the Sephardic and Ashkenazic world. His grandfather was one of the great Ashkenazic rabbis. His grandfather was Rabbi Yosef Beiler. Yeah. Now, the Chida's father, Yitzchak Zerachia, had a sister. Who's the sister married to? Rabbi Yoina Navon. So Rabbi Yoina Navon is who to the Chida? His uncle. Rabbi Yoina Navon was the Paisek Hadar. Rabbi Yoina Navon was the Paisek Hadar. He's also in the Shem Magdar. Look at number 17. Moiri is Rebbe. He's also the Rebbe of the Chida. Moiri, Rabbi Yoina Navon, Ben Rav Chanun Navon, was Rav in Yerushalayim. He wrote the well-known sefer Nechba B'Kesef. He wrote a pilpul on Hilchos Gittin. He wrote a beer on all the Tosfos of Rav Eliyahu Mizrahi. Dehaya Echad Mirabbanei Hadar V'Chemat Lo Hiniach Paskin Kamoisav Galiloi Seinu. There was Kamat, no halakhic authority like my uncle Rav Yonah Navon. And he was a chassid, and he was a makubal, and he passed away at only 47 years old on the 16th day of Shvat in the year 1760. 47, that's right. The Chida was born in Yerushalayim. He writes that in the Yosef Oinat. His mother was Sarah, and he was born after 7 months of pregnancy. And when he was born, they thought he was dead. There was no sign of life. And they just left him on the side. And his grandmother said, I think there's a pulse in the kid. And the grandmother put him in cotton, warmed him up, and the rest is history, as they say. What was his name? His name was Yosef. Chaim and David were added. His name was Yosef Azulai. Actually, after I got a hold of the signature, there's a Yid who travels through all the libraries in Italy. Someone put me in touch with. He's publishing the journals of the Chida. He sent me a picture of the signature of the Chida with the boat. And after the boat, he signed his name in English, Joseph Azulai. I could show it to you. The Chida knew English. In fact, I didn't know this when we were in France. When the Chida was in France and he went to Versailles, King Louis was coming out of the palace and he saw the Chida and he was so impressed with the Chida, he asked someone, who is this ambassador? What country is he an ambassador for? Okay. Chida began. Now, the first sefer the Chida wrote was the Parish on Hurriyos. It's called Shar Yosef. He wrote it when he was 17 years old. His father gave him haskama. His father was Rabbi Glatstein. His father wrote about him that when my boy was 6 or 7 years old, the Spirit of God began to beat in him, and that's when he was makabel on himself the oil time. So far we have Avram Azulai, who left Spain in 1492. We have Avram Azulai, the great-great-grandfather of the Chida, the Chesed Avram. We have Avram Azulai, a cousin, a makubal, who wrote Kameas. You ready? There's a fourth Avram Azulai. And that's the son of the Chida. The son of the Chida. Now, many times over the years, we said over the following hashkafa from the Chida. And this is something I saw today, and I was very blown away by it. Do you remember when Yaakov Avinu was running away from Lavan? Finally, Lavan catches up with him. So they said, okay, let's make a meal. They make a meal, and Yaakov needs someone to gather stones. So Vayikra Yaakov le Echad. Yaakov called his brothers. So Rashi's bothered. His brothers, Yaakov doesn't have brothers. He has one brother, Esav, and he's not calling Esav. Rashi says, Le'echav banav. Shehem echav nigashim le'ezra u'l'macham. You know who his brothers were? His children. Says the Chida, from here we see you should treat your children like they're your brothers, not like they're your children. Says the Chida, we learn from Yaakov Avinu, if you want to be successful with your children, treat them like they're your brother, not like they're your children. And he brings a gematria from the Sefer Hasidim. Hine matoy v'manoim sheves achim gam. Achim gam is gematria banim. It means treat them like brothers. In other words, like friends. I was very blown away because in the Shema Gedolim, Chida talks about the Sefer Chazei HaTnufa. Look at number 23. And in the Chazei HaTnufa, the Chida says the Chazei HaTnufa is basically a summary of the Shas Teshuvas Harash. And he says, you know, ukishera b'ni yedid nafshi achizayin hazeh. When my son, my best friend saw this, I never saw anybody refer to their son in any rabbinic literature as yedid nafshi. But it's the Chida l'shitase. The Chida l'shitase. Usually, you know, Rav Moshe would say that Yaakov, you know, contemporary rabbanim may refer to their, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone refer to their son as yedid nafshi. But this is the Chida l'shitase. So, like the Malbim said, the great contribution of the Chida is he took many of our benefactors whose names were lost and he brought them to life. Tonight we learned about, besides Reb Chaim Yosef David Azulai, his son Avram Azulai, his father Rabbi Yitzchak Zarachia, his uncle Rabbi Yoina Nevain, his grandfather Rabbi Shai Azulai, who's buried where? By Zechariah. His great grandfather Rabbi Yitzchak Azulai, his great uncles Rabbi Yamin Se'evi, Rabbi David Yitzchaki, his cousin Rabbi Avram Yitzchaki is also buried there on Har HaZeisim. His great grandfather Rabbi Avram Azulai, his great grandfather Rabbi Mordechai Azulai, his great grandfather Rabbi Avram Azulai the first. And if you want to know, there's a fifth Avram Azulai who was nifter in this century, is buried in Marrakesh as well, a descendant of the Makubal Rabbi Avram Azulai who wrote the Kneis. So we were introduced to many great Gedolei Yisrael, and above all, we learned a little bit about the background of the Chida. Perhaps we'll continue the subject. So Chusam Yagen Olein V'Ako Yisrael Am.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.